Hi everyone, I'm April and welcome to Ask Vinnie Thompson 2 Cent Tuesday. Today we'll talk about the importance of co-brokerage with our guest speakers, Emilio Estevez and Diallo Stevens, realtors from Keller Williams, New York, and Colleen Forbes from Victory Top Service Realty. So Vinnie, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I hear the applause. Did you hit the applause button?
Yeah.
Yay! Hercules, Hercules. All right, coming to you live from my car because I'm having some technical difficulties. Um, we're going to talk about my 2 cents or our 2 cents about the market. And now more than ever, I want to talk about co-broking, right? Sometimes you co-broke or you go broke, right? We all sometimes may need help with getting that listing sold. It's always the dream to double end the deal. Doesn't always work like that. So, you need to co-broke with your fellow realtors out there. I wanted to start with the man of the hour, Diallo Stevens, because once upon a time, uh, I had a listing and I was working at another brokerage. I had their name and number plastered all over my car as I met this man, and he couldn't stop laughing at me. He was definitely laughing at me, not with me. And he sold my listing. And at the time, I really had no idea because I wasn't familiar with the language of real estate. I remember saying, yeah, I'm going to sell a listing. Like, you will never. This is my listing. I'll have it till I die. It's mine. But the language of real estate, he did sell my listing. I ended up joining Keller Williams as a result of meeting him and finding out the systems in place on how to win at a high level. And that was still one of my best co-brokes that I've done to date because I changed over my life and started real estate. So with no further ado, he has lots of lettuce and tomatoes and cheese behind his name, super designations, and a great guy, Diallo Stevens.
Well, hello everybody. So, how do you want to do this, Vinny? You want to ask questions, or you want me just to share some
No,
thoughts?
you can share some thoughts and talk about that time when you laughed at me when I met you.
Okay, so it is true. It was kind of funny. I, in fairness, I didn't laugh at you until later, right?
True, 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 true.
So,
Facts.
so since this topic is about co-broking, I think some
Right.
perspective is important, right? So
Hmm.
we are all in New York, right? Downstate New York City, Long Island. And historically, it's a pretty dog eat dog market, right? It is almost always a seller's market. And generally, when people have listings, you know, they'd rather sell them themselves. It's a seller's market. Why not, right? So, now with the NAR change, right, essentially getting rid of office exclusives for all intents and purposes, things will change, and yet things change and they stay the same, don't they?
Hmm.
So ultimately, uh, the way I would look at it is obviously, if you're a listing agent, you want to do what's in your client's best interest, and you're a business person, you want to do what's in your best interest, right? Uh, for this conversation, let's look at it from the perspective of the agent that's working with the buyer. Now, I know many people in other areas, buyer's brokerage is normal, right? In downstate New York, it's less normal, right? When Vinny and I met, I was acting as a buyer's agent, right? So one of the things that I encourage a selling agent to do is to make it easy for the listing agent and the seller to say yes to you, right? So sometimes when people are trying to negotiate deals, the way they do it um, puts the listing agent on the defense, right? But the listing agent typically has a lot more leverage than the selling agent does, so that's not the smartest way to play it. If you're acting as a buyer's brokerage, a buyer's broker, or buyer's agent, typically agents have conversations with their buyers that hire me because I'm going to save you money. I'm going to get you the best deal. You're setting yourself up for trouble there, right? Because ultimately the market's going to determine what the people have to pay. You should be helping them best compete in that market. And if that means that they need to pay a little bit more, right, the expectation shouldn't be that just because you're in the mix, it's going to cost them less. So ultimately, when I worked with Vinny on that initial deal, You know, the goal was to make it easy for him to say yes and for his seller to say yes so that my buyer would win. And ultimately that's what happened. So avoid things like going after the listing broker's commission. I've been in classes in our own market centers where, you know, someone, you know, a trainer will say, hey, you know, if I'm coming in at X commission, co-broke commission, I'm a buyer's agent, that's the listing agent's problem. And personally, I think that's a little bit short-sighted. If it becomes a problem for the listing agent, is the listing agent going to be motivated for you to get the deal? If what you're doing potentially makes them look bad or makes them feel like they're going to lose money, no, probably not, right? So think about how can you make it a win for everybody, right? And for me, the key when I'm representing a buyer is managing their expectations from the beginning. They have to understand that they will be competing, right? So even though I might be the best agent in the world, right? And of course, you should hire me, right? The reality is the other buyers aren't going to let you steal the property. So the question becomes, what can you do to make yourself more attractive, less of a risk to the seller so that they will choose you? And if you do that, even if you have an agent, a listing agent, unlike Vinny, right? Vinny's willing to co-broke, right? He's an open, you all know how he is. But even if you have somebody who's like, no, it's all mine, you know, if the buyer makes an offer that people can't refuse, right? Ultimately, what's the listing agent going to do to block it, right? It's going to look stupid to his client? Probably not. And sometimes, you know, people think, well, a house, a property isn't worth X, whatever. That's all perception. The bottom line is until you have a deal, you don't have anything, right? So if you can encourage your buyers to make compelling offers, at the end of the day, there's going to be an appraisal 9 times out of 10, right? What happens if the appraisal comes in low? Work it out, right? But at that point, the seller is a captive audience, right? If you try to get smarter than the market, and you say, oh, well, you know, property's not worth that, you might be right. And yet your buyer is not going to end up with a contract and you're not going to end up getting paid. So don't try to outsmart the market, try to work the market.
You know, you brought up some key points there, and you know, I get referrals from out of state, so do you. And I'm always amazed that out of state, out of New York, they do use, you know, co-broking and buyer's broker at a high level. And what you said is so true about New York really being, you know, in that seller's market. And it's good to have those conversations up front, you know, with the buyer of that you have to win the bid. That may be you making, you know, your offer more than what the house is worth to make your offer more attractive. And I'm never counting the buyer's money, but you know, that $5 conversation, you know, for $5 more, each thousand, you know, can help you win that house, $25 or whatever the case may be. And I think it's kind of hard for some buyers who don't have the benefit of having that conversation about, you know, having a buyer's broker really being competitive and don't win the house. It's kind of rough because they may mean well, but just for a few more bucks, you know, you could make that compelling argument and win the bid for that home. Same goes with the appraisal. That conversation with the seller, hey, you know, that's a conversation we should have now, just in case, you know, it doesn't appraise, you know. So you made some really good compelling arguments, especially on the deal we did on, was that 2017? And then we just did like another deal a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also, you know, great to have, you know, a sharp agent on the other end that helps you, you know, with the deal. You know, we're not, you know, competing against each other. We're trying to make the deal happen for both buyer and seller. And that's really is the key. And I tell my buddies outside of New York, everything you heard about New York is true. Times 5. You know, it's a wacky market. You know, it's the concrete jungle, but it's a concrete jungle that I know. You know, and I get to know it better by working with great agents like yourself.
Thank you.
That's just the truth. Another gentleman here, Mr. Emilio Estevez. He's actually from my office. We just did a deal together. I also met him around the same time when I was at the other company. And we were working on a house at the time my office had. And I remember that deal, Emilio. It was right across the street from the cemetery. And
It was.
man, we were struggling to get that house, man. And there's so many
Yeah.
different cultures. I remember we came like this close to actually selling it. I don't know if it was to your client or somebody else, and somebody came and said, "Oh my God, I like the house, but the dead body juice is gonna be in the house. I just can't do it." And it's just a mess, you know. So you talk about a buyer's
Yeah.
broker. You know, they got a discount, of course, because it was across you from the cemetery. But I
Yeah.
remember meeting you there, and I wasn't with
Hmm.
KW at the time, but I was
Hmm.
intrigued. Even meeting you as an agent, we met. We ended up working together. We just did a deal together.
Yeah.
So, what say you, Emilio, about co-broking and buyer's broker? Because I know you hustle and get it done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember that, Vinny. That was you were still at your old place, and
Yeah,
you came to the right side, and
yeah,
we happy to have you in the office too, man. So yeah, I mean, I have an interesting perspective when it comes to just co-broking, just because when I initially came to Keller Williams, I was a part of the team and I was a buyer's agent. So while a lot of people kind of start and they might take listings, it's you obviously can double, you could dual side a deal. As a buyer's agent, you're forced to co-broke. So I
hmm
was kind of like I had to sharpen my sword in terms of being able to especially in all the things that you guys just finished saying about the New York market. New York City is brutal. Queens is even more so. Like
oh
Manhattan,
yeah,
there's rules there. For the
right,
most part, they're splitting their commission. You want to come see something, they're letting you see that same day. In Queens, they're gonna make sure that whatever it is that they could possibly do to block you, they're blocking you. And again, it's coming from a perspective. Just to give you guys, further perspective. That first year at Keller Williams, just doing buyer transactions, I capped just doing buyer transactions. So I feel like I'm kind of qualified on being able to speak on how to co-broke to at least get some success. So what kind of I think a lot of the time, especially in Queens, which is our market, or my market, Queens, Brooklyn, Nassau County. Uh, a lot of the time, I feel like listing agents are not so intrigued to do business with another real estate agent because of them not feeling that they're going to be competent on the deal. And that was something that in the beginning, I had to bump my head a bunch of times to learn that, how an offer looks makes a massive difference. Like now me having, sold a couple, quite a few properties on the listing side, I understand now the frustration that a listing agent has when you get an offer and it's horrendous. Like it looks horrendous. It's like, where did you scan this? Like I had an offer come in and I didn't know who the offer was coming in from. Like that's incredible. Like they didn't have a signature of the realtor. It was a realtor because of the email. I can tell, but that was something that I learned rather early on. Is you prepare a nice looking offer. Um, you know, Vinny, my offer to you is it's not, there's no bells and whistle in it, but you look at it and it's concise.
right,
Here's what the price is. Here's what the down payment is. Who the person is that's actually purchasing the property. Very concise but efficient. And then
right,
actually putting documentation in the email to make sure that this person looks as best as they possibly can. Um, I've never put an offer in and not gotten the feedback from the realtor like rather fast, like within that same day because of how I go about it. I'm gonna send a real nice looking offer, and I'm gonna call the person before I actually send the offer, and I'm gonna call them after too. It's like, hey, listen, that call before might be, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to actually show my client this property. They have interest in it, and I wanted to share my gratitude, but also let you know that an offer is coming in the next 24
But
hours.
hold on, Emilio, you make a key point right there. I don't want to gloss over it.
No, no, go ahead.
What are you doing when call the listing agent, and you're speaking to them like that, especially in regards to your offer, which, I don't see it done often.
Yeah, totally. That again, now those are things that came from sharpening my sword because I started realizing certain things didn't work. It was like this is how you do it from somebody else, and I realized, hey, that's not really working. Especially for me, it's like I need this deal to be accepted because I'm not getting any money from the listing guy. I'm a buyer's agent. So
Right.
literally, coming. I used to call it just kind of kissing behind a little bit. make the listing agent feel like they're like,
It's building rapport, Emilio. It's building
yeah, pretty much.
rapport. It's not,
Yeah, pretty much.
come on.
Yeah, for sure. Building rapport. Yeah, I guess you could call
Mhm.
it that. So, just being sincere. It's like, hey, listen, I'm gonna send something over to you. I would appreciate, you take a look at it and let me know, within the next 72 hours of what you kind of think about it. And those little steps, like making the phone call before and after, sending a proper offer, that made a huge difference. And I didn't once I started implementing those things, for the most part, I didn't get a lot of pushback from other agents. And obviously, again, for me to make transactions happen at that time, I needed to be able to co-broke. So I think that's a lot of where it kind of starts at, is in our particular market. People are just scared that you just don't know what you're doing. They're gonna have to do all the work. The listing agent, they obviously want to do end the deal. I'm talking to my buyers, telling them to come in, as competitive as possible. We're not kind of playing around with lowball offers. I personally don't do business with people that are that's what their intention is. So, little things like that is what, helps to actually make sure co-broke happens. And in our business, especially Keller Williams and the culture that we have, you have to be co-broken. Like you're missing out on a massive amount of money if you're not co-broken.
Yeah, and you mentioned some key points there, because there's so many moving parts in the deals in New York, from us being an attorney state to the fact that in other states, right, you work out the details of what the repairs are later. Here, you do an inspection before you go to contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if the attorney, is feeling a way about the repairs or another situation, is so many ways the deal can die. You are kind of nervous. Okay, wow, am I getting involved with this person? I don't know him, don't know his attorney. Is his bank going to be okay? And so many moving parts that you're signing up to this stranger. It's like, how can we get this deal done and work together to get it done? And it's always, it can be tough.
Yeah,
It can be tough.
it's true. But it's essential, man. It really is. Like there's a lot of people that do what it is that we do, especially in the New York City area, and they think that just gonna, figure it out, be a lone wolf and make the amount of money that they ultimately want to make. It's just it's a bad way of looking at business. And on the listing side, I'm always super generous. I pay higher than the market does, and that's how I get my sellers to, the top dollar. And I explain that to them when I'm getting the listing, which, I'm letting them know. I like show them behind the veil, and that type of transparency. It's hard for people to compete with me, because I'm not sitting down breaking down where the compensation is going. And I'm letting them know that the likelihood that we may likely be co-broking on this. And that's why you're paying me X amount, because I'm going to have to probably pay somebody out. And they appreciate those things. And, I'm encouraging co-broking at the same time.
Now, you have a whole lot of designations on negotiations and different courses you've been through. How does that help you with your negotiating skills? And how long you been in business now, Diallo?
18 years.
18 years. Okay, wow, it's a little longer than I've been alive, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great
the
to
earth
know,
was
man.
flat.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about some of your negotiating skills and the courses that you've done.
So, I'm a knowledge-based person, right? Like, I always take classes, I'm always trying to, improve. And I think that classes are helpful, but it's not what school you go to, it's how much of the school goes into you, right? How many times do we take a class and then 2 weeks later, we've forgotten most of what we learned,
Right.
From the perspective of co-broking within Keller Williams, I would say a couple of thoughts. So first off, to your point, learning how to negotiate, learning different schools of thought on negotiation is never a bad thing, right? Applying it effectively is important, right? Because if you take some of these classes and you go in with your 5-point plan, right, how you're going to negotiate this deal, but you're dealing with somebody who's not interested in that, right? You are talking to inattention, right? So one of the most important things is to put yourself in their shoes, right? What do you think is important to them? I did a deal, I have a deal pending now post-COVID where the broker is actually the seller. It's investment property, right? But we're on shutdown. Last thing she wanted to do was show the property, right? in this instance, she told me, she said, look, I got an offer from somebody last week. I was supposed to show them. So it was an offer subject to seeing the house, right? And I decided not to because I'm so scared of COVID and I can't take any risks. So I understood where she was coming from. I also understood that this was an investment property for her. It was costing her money every day. And going to contract with the wrong buyer, right, means that she's likely in 2 months to be stuck with a deal that's not closing. My buyer client happened to be a city employee, right? So I made the case for her. I helped her understand that from her perspective, if my buyer liked the property, and I didn't show the buyer, right? That arrangement was made because we're on lockdown, right? If my buyer liked the property, she was the answer to all the seller/broker's problems, right? Ultimately, we worked it out, got it done. Everybody's thrilled with the number, and hopefully within the next week or so, we're closing. But you can have all the theory in the world, but if you don't start with thinking about where the other person is coming from, right? Not just the client that they're representing, but the person that you're negotiating with, your counterpart, right? Then it's going to be a lot tougher. Also, you can negotiate a great deal and have a problem with execution, right? Because everybody's miserable. Now you get a co-broke who doesn't want to help, right? Because, they felt like, the deal, they didn't win, right? They felt like, like you won, right? If you won, right? So that happens, that happens a lot. And like the deal that we just did a few months ago, Vinny, right? Obviously, there were some issues on the seller side, your client side, and the condition of the property, right? But we had to roll up our sleeves and figure it out and get it to the closing. And ultimately, that's what we did. So, at the end of the day, every market is different, right? Every situation is different. My attitude is, think about the big picture. What are the variables? What's important to everybody? And then try to put it together. You can get your real estate negotiation expert certification. You can get your master certified negotiating expert, right? You can get all these things, right? Which I have done, right? And it's good, but ultimately you're going to pick what's important to you and then just work it in to how you're communicating with other people. At the end of the day, if they win and you get paid, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? If a buyer pays a little bit more for a house, right? And you get a commission, right? They get the house that they wanted, right? Is that a big difference than if they paid a little bit less? No. Think about it. From a book perspective, it's a difference, right? But think about what's really in that buyer's best interest, right? The next year, the market goes up by 10%, right? They've just made a 10% return on something that cost them what? $600 over the course of a year. Isn't that a deal you would make 9 times to Sunday, right?
Sure.
Now, but here's the question. If they're working with another agent who cannot help them understand that, are they in a better position or in a worse position? Right? Gotta ask them, help them get it. And when we do that early on, it sets the stage for more cooperation, just makes things a lot easier. And then it's not like, well, you promised that you were going to save me money and I ended up paying more. Okay. I'd rather them say, you know what, I totally get everything you said from the beginning. Makes sense. Thank you. Right? Now refer me some business.
Right. And you mentioned money. Emilio, there's something that you said you're not shy on doing as far as, compensation and asking for more. And that goes back to, rapport. And I think having rapport and trying to get stuff done is really key in all of these negotiations. Because once again, right, the New York market is, always a little bit different than everything else, than everywhere else, and especially the market in Queens and Brooklyn, AKA the wild, wild west, as it's been dubbed, But like I said, it's the market that I know. And, we try to work to get it done, try to make it a win-win for everybody.
It's true.
Yeah, I think so that's all I got, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in, talking about this co-broke. We all are working during this COVID season, getting stuff done. And, we had one more guest, but I think she couldn't get in. Sorry about that, Colleen. She was trying to text me, but I don't know. Some operational difficulties. So that's it, guys. You know, I'm here in New York. So is Emilio Estevez. Any relation, Emilio? Any
Nah,
relation
nah,
to?
nah,
No. Okay. All right.
nah, not at all,
Okay.
man. Not at all.
All right. And the Diallo Stevens. You know.
Mm-hmm. No,
All
definitely.
right.
Appreciate you, Vinny. Thank you, man.
Yep.
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. You know.
Mhm.
Happy to
course.
help anytime.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
All right,
guys.
Diallo. Talk to you later.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Bye.
guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. All right.